Buongiorno a tutti e buongiorno a Marco. Buongiorno, come stai?
Buongiorno Martin, bene? Sto bene, un po' stanco, ho un po' sonno, I am a little sleepy.
Un po' sonno.
Fridays, you know.
Venerdì. Not the Romans' fault that you're tired
No,
then.
no, no, no,
You're
not the Romans'
sleepy.
fault. Well, the Romans named the days of the week, so I do blame them a little bit, but
Hmm.
I don't think that, yeah, weekend was their idea.
Okay, so o sonno
Hmm.
is I'm sleepy. O
Correct.
stanco is I'm tired.
Now, ho sonno, I am sleepy, or literally I have sleep, whereas
Hmm.
sono stanco is I am tired.
Sono, not
Hmm.
avere, but okay, essere. Okay, very good. Right.
Yes,
I'm sure
it's
we'll get to that in a future episode.
we will definitely, and stanco is one of the very few things that you are and not have in Italian because, as you know, ho fame, I'm hungry, ho sete, I'm thirsty, but sono stanco. So,
Okay, sono stanco. Okay. So, una altra domanda.
sì.
Da dove vieni, Marco?
Ah, io vengo da una piccola città vicino a Milano.
Una piccola città vicino a Milano, a small city
Mhm.
close to Milano.
Sì,
Ma dove abito adesso?
dove abiti adesso.
Oh, sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm asking where I live. Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll get to verbs as well soon, and then I'll maybe understand. Dove abiti? Abiti adesso.
Ah, adesso abito in Spagna. Now I live in Spain.
Sounds good.
Yes. Well, I will make a short parenthesis about that abito abiti. We talked last week about masculine and feminine, and we know that endings are one of the trickiest things. One of the ideas that I received, Martin, would be to have a last bonus class in which we discuss kind of the hardest pain points for you as an English speakers to learn Italian. And I have a lot of people telling me for English speakers, the last letter is super annoying in Italian to get right. The A, O, I, E in nouns, adjectives, and verbs, obviously, which we have not talked about yet, but probably we should at some point.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We could possibly go through ourselves and re-listen to the first 10 episodes and really come up with a list of things that have stood out that perhaps we could do with going over again and just revising for people. Because
Yes.
yeah, it's not something that we have in English, as you alluded to last week, apart from an S in the plural, we don't really do it. And it's a bit like a code, and that's good. I like challenges, I like codes.
Perfetto. E tu, Martin, come stai?
Oggi, questa settimana, ho mal di gola.
Mhm, sì, la tua
I
voce è
think,
più profonda. Your voice is deeper today.
oh, that's good. That's often a good thing.
It is.
Okay.
It is. In our society, it is.
Yeah. And I think perhaps maybe this is an episode for the future as well with illnesses and ailments. So we can,
Yes, the episode of the old age.
yeah, that's it. Yeah. I think when you're, especially when you're traveling abroad, often it's a bit of an issue, isn't it? When if you come across like you or one of your family members is not feeling very well, and you've got to think, right, okay, well, I can go to a pharmacia. However, do I understand what all these products are? Right. Well, we should probably go back through the script from the last episode and give the answers to people.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that.
Mm. So, episodio sette, it was,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't it?
Sì.
And so the first question was, what time does Martin think that the event begins? Credo alle cinque or forse cinque e mezza.
Perfetto.
So that it was at 5 o'clock, or perhaps 5:30,
Mhm.
cinque e mezza. And then the second one, what table was assigned to them? So what table was assigned to them? What table was it, Marco?
I remember it was a very long number, like 54, something like that. They were
Mm,
not lucky.
esatto, 54.
Molto bene. Ed era come il bagno, like the bathroom usually is, at the bottom on the right, in fondo a destra.
In fondo a destra, yeah, that's right. The bottom on the right, yeah. In front, so that's either the table near the bathroom or the table where the shady dealings are going on.
Yes, where people are buying and selling pesto.
Pesto, brilliant. Okay, so questa settimana, what are we doing? What is this episodio about, Marco?
Well, you started asking me where I am from, and I think that the idea was to talk about the fact that the weather is different in Spain than it is in Italy. So,
Mm.
first of all, let me ask you back where you are from, or where do you live, Martin? Tu dove abiti?
Abito in una piccola città, Humforth, vicino a Huddersfield, Leeds, Manchester,
Molto
in
bene.
Yorkshire. Abito in Yorkshire.
So, if I wanted to ask you, if you wanted to ask me what the weather is in Spain, for example, right
Mm.
now, how would you ask that?
I think it's che tempo fa
Perfetto.
is what is the weather.
Correct.
Che tempo fa oggi in Spagna?
Perfetto. Che tempo fa? What literally, what better does it make? What better does it do? We know that fare, or we don't know, but fare is both to do and to make. So
Mm.
very handy verb and very irregular one. Che tempo fa oggi, today, in Spagna, in Spain? Great.
Mm. Tempo is an interesting word, though, isn't it?
Oh, tempo is a funny one. Yes, tempo means a
Mm.
lot of things. But the most important two things that it means is weather and time. So,
Two things that are absolutely not related at all.
not completely
Whose
unrelated.
fault's that?
I have an idea about that. That is a Latin word.
Right.
But so
Enough
yeah,
said.
I have my guess.
Mm.
Yeah. But the answer to that question, for example, che tempo fa, I could answer two different ways. I could use the verb fare again,
Hmm.
but realistically, I would use the verb essere, which is a bit easier in this case. Oggi c'è il sole. And I think I want to talk about this c'è thing because it's a very interesting little phrase. C apostrophe E. Are you familiar with that, Martin?
Yes, I am.
That's very useful because as opposed to which means is or it is, c'è means there is. So very handy.
Mm. So you have c'è and you have ci sono.
Molto bene, ci sono, there are. C'è il sole, could be
See?
an answer. E I would add, è molto caldo.
È molto caldo. Okay, and they see this is a really that's something I really struggled with Italian to begin with. If you're saying c'è molto caldo and c'è molto freddo, because automatically for an English speaker, caldo sounds like it's going to be cold. And in my head, what I've had to do is I've had to try and think of the word scalding, as in scalding hot. And
Right.
that's how I remember caldo. And it's particularly difficult when you come across taps, and one of them says C and one of them says F, because we have taps that say C on them, and it means cold. And it's
Right.
just getting your head to think in a completely different way.
But no, I agree with the scolding hot. It's probably a good idea to remember words that are weird to us. And you're right, in Germanic languages, it's not only English, I think it's the same in German, that cold is
Yeah, yeah.
generally cold as opposed to hot,
Hmm.
which is caldo in Italian or caliente in Spanish, or I think something like chaud in French.
That's
But
it. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
so it's very different. It's funny that it's the opposite, but I think it's not the Romans' fault in this case. It's just coincidence.
Mm. It's probably us. It's probably the British that decided to call it something weird. And well, it actually comes from the German, doesn't it? So it'll be with the invasions that we had that we seem to entertain quite happily over the last 2,000 years.
Makes
But
sense.
yeah, caldo and also riscaldamento, is that heating?
Riscaldamento is heating, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Literally, riscaldare is to warm up or to heat. So, correct. Riscaldamento globale, for example, it would be global warming in this case, heating or warming.
Mm. If you believe in that, there will be also people that be offended by that, won't there? So we're having a great episode.
So, for those of
Freddo.
you that are confused, I had to cut out a lot of very controversial parts at this point because it was way too
No,
much.
no, let's keep them in. And let's start talking about UFOs and Bigfoot and things like that as well.
That sounds awful.
So
Um,
we got Che Caldo, so Fa Caldo, should I say?
see,
But then Fa Freddo would be it's cold, and for Freddo, I think freezing.
freddo in Italian is pretty cold. So I
Mm.
would say, okay, if I say freddo, obviously it's not objective, but it's maybe not freezing, but you're definitely wearing a coat. Whereas caldo, I would say if you're like you're wearing a t-shirt or less.
Yeah, I think that's not a very good guide though, because again, I find that when English people go to Italy and walk around in t-shirts, Italians look at us like, what are you doing? And there, generally you can literally you can go to a beach and Italians will be sat there in coats and hats on a
Yes.
beach. And
Um,
so I think you feel the temperature in a slightly different way to what we do.
I think you're right, and I just remember that when I was in Canada and we had way below zero for 3 months, and then people were wearing T-shirts with just barely freezing temperatures. That was very confusing to me, although I get it obviously. But I wanted to avoid talking about degrees because I don't know what our friends use in their country, and obviously we use Celsius in Italy,
Mm.
which might be confusing for some friends from the US and maybe from the UK. I guess you guys use Celsius, right?
Who knows? It's one of those things that we use both,
Oh,
and I
you
think
use both. All right.
it depends what the weather's doing. If it's hot, we'll use Fahrenheit because it makes it sound hotter. And if it's just one of those, I think it's the media that do it. I don't know. And if it's cold, we'll use Celsius because it's not such a massive difference. I,
Okay.
I, I don't know. I've never understood it. Again, I could probably write to somebody, but I don't know who.
We have at the end of this episode of the podcast, please, if you guys know who's responsible for these things that we're very upset about, please get us in contact with them. Who's naming cities?
Perhaps it's
That's
maybe
questions
it's
we
King
care about.
Charles. Perhaps I should write to King Charles the Third.
All right. That's a good guess. I don't know.
Maybe.
Anyways, so if you want to use Celsius, I would say that anything below 10 degrees can already be defined as cold, and anything above 20 degrees can already be defined as hot. So you maybe know, Martin, how much that is in Fahrenheit for our American friends, because I have no idea what 10 Celsius and 20 Celsius is in Fahrenheit.
I know there's some weird conversion that you do. I think what you do is you add 26 and you double it, and then you go next door and knock on and ask them first number that they think of and divide it by that number, and then add that by the number of bottles of milk you got in your fridge that morning.
Right. That's I think that's the measure. But I think in Celsius it's not too hard because zero is usually about the coldest that we have in Italy. Zero is freezing. And I would say that 40 is the highest we have on a very hot day in the summer. So usually going to be in between 0 and 40 in Italy. So, if you're in the bottom 25%, it's cold. And if you're in the top 25%, is hot. So, I mean, that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a subjective thing, isn't it? Whether you feel like it's hot or it's cold, and I think that's where you have to make the decision, don't you? But if you can say it's hot or it's cold, then it's a good start. I think
Yes,
in England, what we really worry about most of the time is whether it's sunny or it's raining.
makes
So,
sense. Okay, so we did say it's sunny.
okay, so c'è il sole is
Sì,
it's sunny.
c'è il sole. And do you
Um,
know how to say it's raining?
il piove,
Without
c'è il
il.
piove.
Without il. Okay, yes, that's where I wanted you. So this is one of the very confusing things. We can say two things: it rains or there is rain. I would say it rains is better, and the way to say
Mhm.
this is piove.
Piove. Okay,
Yes,
so we're just using the verb there.
correct.
Because
That's just the
otherwise, would
verb.
it be c'è pioggia?
Bravo. Pioggia, Pioggia. Pioggia is the noun,
Yeah,
which is a bit tricky to pronounce because the double G is always very scary. I don't know if it's gonna be a G
I
or a
like
K.
it.
You like
I
it?
like, yeah, I like the sound. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Pioggia. That makes sense.
Spiaggia,
Uh-huh.
pioggia nella spiaggia.
That sucks. That is very bad. I don't like that. Spiaggia is
Why is there
beach for our friends.
why is there not a band? There should be a band called Pioggia nella Spaggia.
Pioggia nella spiaggia. That sounds good.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe you can
yeah.
rename your band into that. Nobody's gonna get it, but it
No,
sounds nice.
no. I struggle with for some reason whenever I think of rain, which is why I had to pause. I think of piangere, and I know that's to cry.
Uh-huh. Yes, it's funny because it's not too far. Piangere, pioggia. There might be something there. Some, very old word that kind of connects them, and they
Mm.
both have to do with water falling down, so it would not shock me. But yes, piove is just a very simple way to say it rains. We do not need to say it. We've not talked about verbs yet, but in Italian, we do not need to say what we call the subject pronoun, so it in this case in English. Just saying rains is enough because we conjugate verbs fully, therefore it's very easy to tell if it's I or you or he or she, so we do not need to state that. Piove, just that.
Piove. Okay, piove. It's raining. Okay,
Correct.
good. And we've got sole. We've got the sun. Ciel sole. We've got piove. It's raining. We've got ciel caldo or fa caldo and
Sì.
fa freddo, hot and cold. It's sometimes windy.
Very good. Do you know how to say that?
Well, I know it's vento. So would you say
Vento.
ciel vento
That would
or
work. C'è il
yeah,
vento or c'è vento. In this case, I would
ciel
even skip the
vento?
article, although that's kind of up to anybody. Vento, not venti. Venti is 20. Vento is wind. So kind of,
Mm.
easy,
Another
easy mix
poem.
up. Yeah, another poem that will work amazingly. The 20 winds of the
Yeah,
crying rain. Something like
yeah.
that.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Or,
Wow.
or a shirt.
Uh, Yeah, or another shirt. Absolutely. Right. So we seem to have a group of words then let's start with che. So che il sole, che il vento. Are there any others that we could say? Oh, I've got one. C'è la nebbia.
C'è la nebbia, very, very important weather condition in the north of Italy, where I'm from. Now it's not anymore as common, but when I was young and strong, basically all throughout the winter, we would wake up to a fog, nebbia, that
Right.
was super thick. And that doesn't happen
Right.
anymore as much, but it used to be insane. La nebbia.
That's good.
And there's actually a saying, it's a very frequently said, nebbia in Valpadana. And
Ah,
Valpadana is that region in the very north where Milan is. It's the Padam Valley, basically where
right.
the Po, the river that we have, and nebbia, very common in the north, yes.
Right. That was just interesting how you said it was super thick because we talk about a fog that's like soup
Right.
because
That
you're wading
was,
through it. Yeah. So
yeah,
you
yeah,
could like,
yeah.
yeah. C'è il nebbia come la zuppa.
La nebbia come la zuppa, yes. We say in Italian nebbia che si taglia con il coltello. A fog that you cut through with a knife. Yes, I don't know if it's
Okay.
an English thing as well. I don't think so. Never heard that.
No,
Yeah.
no, I've not heard that.
So
No.
c'è la nebbia, and I think that the
Mm.
last one that is worth mentioning is neve.
Okay, so that's a verb again, a bit like piove.
Neve is the noun. That's where Italian gets annoying.
Ah,
Neve is
oh,
the
so
noun.
nevica.
There you
Nevica
go.
would be
Nevica,
right.
it snows. Neve,
Yeah,
la neve, it's feminine, the snow.
right,
Yes.
right. Okay, la neve is the snow. Nevica, it's snowing, as in piove, it's raining.
Very good, yes. So piove, it
Okay.
rains or it's raining. Nevica, it's snowing. So this is where Italian gets a bit annoying. Usually when we have a name, a noun, and a verb that are the same, they're very similar, but then that's not always the case. So there you go. And
Mm.
I should say that in these cases, piove and nevica, we don't really use, we can conjugate the verb. We can say I rain, piovo, although that's very infrequent. When would you ever say I rain? So usually we just use the third person singular, piove or nevica. So that's the only one we need to really remember.
Right. Okay. Okay, that's good. I like that. Any other bits of weather we should know about that we might stumble into? Il temporale.
Sì, we could say that. Il temporale. C'è, per esempio, c'è un temporale. There is a storm.
Hmm. What's the difference between temporale and tempesta?
It's very small. I've mostly heard tempesta used at sea, and I've mostly heard temporale
Have you spent
used.
a lot of time at sea?
Yes, when I used to be a salmon fisherman in Alaska. No, and I've never been on a. No, but actually, it's interesting that you should ask because there is a very famous. I think that a lot of Italian novels talked about the sea. There's a very famous writer that I might recommend to anybody that's listening. It's called Emilio Salgari,
Okay.
and he talked about the pirates in the Borneo in Indonesia.
Oh,
It's a very very famous book called well, a very famous series of book called Sandokan. That was the name of the pirate, and the guy never left his home. But he was super, I don't know, super interested about that world and wrote a bunch of books about Indonesia or something. So it's pretty impressive. But no, I've never been on a big
wow.
boat, so I just know that tempesta is the word we use at sea, whereas temporale, and temporale is usually a summer quick rain, very violent but very short. So it's
Okay.
usually very fast.
Would that be like an what's that? What's the word I'm searching for here?
That is a tricky word you're trying to think. Yes,
Yeah, acquizzone,
acquazzone.
acquazzone.
Very
Okay,
good.
that's like a downpour, is it?
Correct. Yes, aqua is obviously water, and then that
Yeah.
zone is I don't know what it means literally, but it's kind of something that makes it bigger. So like a bunch of water basically coming at once. So I guess yeah, downfall or something.
C'è un
Waterfall.
acquazzone.
C'è un acquazzone. Yes.
Okay, so if I want to ask what the temperature is, then if I need to know whether to put my hat and my coat on, how would I ask that?
Good question. A few ways, obviously, as always, we can do. We know that the word for temperature is very similar. It's temperatura.
Temperatura.
So I would say a very linear, straightforward way to ask this would be qual è la temperatura?
Qual è la temperatura?
Yeah, so which is the temperature? That quale or qual means which. So very close to
Mm,
what, but it's a bit more specific.
okay.
Or you could ask also che temperatura c'è?
Che temperatura c'è? So
Very
not
good.
che temperatura è, but c'è. Why c'è and not è?
Uh, because I would say that the answer is there are so many degrees. So I would ask, like in my mind, I would rather ask there is as opposed to it is. But it's very, I mean, nobody would care. I said temperatura c'è. I could say che temperatura è, che temperatura fa. Also very common.
Right.
Especially, I would say in the north, it's kind of maybe one day we'll talk about dialects, but it's kind of something we say a lot in the north. Fa 10 gradi, for example. It makes 10 degrees, which is improper Italian, so don't say that. But you can really mix and match. We've seen fare, fa, we've seen essere, and there to be, c'è. I would say these three things can be used almost interchangeably in most situations.
So I could say c'è 10 gradi.
In Milan, yes. Although in the rest of Italy, we say ci sono 10 gradi.
Ah, ci sono, because of course it's gradi, which is plural because it ends in the I. So ci sono
Correct.
10 gradi.
10
Okay.
gradi,
So it's
esattamente.
un grado, 2 gradi.
Esatto. So you would say c'è un grado, there is 1 degree Celsius, obviously. Or ci
Mhm.
sono 2 gradi, ci sono 3 gradi, ci sono however many degrees there are. And we don't need to say
And you would,
Celsius because, it's Celsius.
that was exactly what I was going to ask because, right, because everybody just speaks in Celsius, so it makes
Yes.
sense.
I
Right.
mean, I think
Okay.
I read somewhere how Fahrenheit is calculated, and it's basically it's insane to me. It's like the least scientific thing I've ever heard of. So we just stick
Yeah.
with Celsius. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe people could tweet us and tell us the best way of working out temperature conversion.
Well, I learned when I was in Canada that -40 is the same for Celsius and Fahrenheit. So that's something I
Oh,
know. Yes. So if it's very cold, you can just say the number without saying anything else. But
all right.
it's not often that
Next.
it's -40, obviously, if you're not in Canada in January. So
Thank goodness.
that usually
Yeah.
doesn't work out. So yes, che temperatura c'è, fa, è, or you could ask quanti gradi ci sono. how many degrees are there, which is even more straightforward of a question and even easier, I guess, to remember because it's just simpler.
Quanti gradi ci sono?
Perfetto. Quanti gradi ci
Okay,
sono? Ci sono so many degrees.
grazie. And we asked what the temperature was or what the weather was today. Che tempo fa oggi? How would we say then? Would we say exactly the same thing for tomorrow, but replace oggi with the word for tomorrow?
That's the best way to do it. I always tell everybody that studies Italian, you need to speak and you need to know the present and you need to know a past. For the future, we have a future. Obviously, we have a way to say there will be or it will be and so forth. But we can use the present for the future. As you say in English, tomorrow there is so many degrees. It's not the perfect way to say it, but it's fine. So you could just say domani ci sono 20 gradi, for example. Tomorrow it is 20 degrees.
Okay, so domani is tomorrow. So domani ci sono 20 gradi.
Perfetto. Or the question could be che tempo fa, che tempo c'è, o che tempo è domani.
Domani. Okay. And so we've got oggi for today and domani for tomorrow. What's yesterday?
Yes, for yesterday it would be ieri.
Ieri.
And that's a bit trickier because using the present in the past, it's very hard to do in a way
So
that
we
is
won't
grammatically
worry.
sound.
Let's not worry about what the weather was yesterday
I mean,
because we've
who's
got
gonna ask you what the weather was yesterday? Come on, I mean that's over. You know, the tomorrow is important. So if someone
live
asks
in the
you
now.
exactly, someone asks you what the weather was yesterday, answer tomorrow the weather will be, and make it look like it's some spiritual philosophical thing, and you don't worry
Yeah.
about the past, but just about the present and the future. That's a good
Turn it
answer.
into a positive.
Yes, good.
Absolutely. Tell them it's going to rain tomorrow.
And we are turning into a motivational podcast. So
Well, we've covered history, we've covered geography, we've covered everything this episode. It's been brilliant. So
yes,
perhaps we should think about wrapping up the episode for today anyway.
I think
But before
so.
we do, can I ask you, che tempo fa oggi in Spagna?
Oggi c'è il sole e fa caldo. It's unseasonably hot for even for southern Spain.
Naturalmente.
Yeah, naturalmente. E fa freddo in Inghilterra?
Sì, freddo, freddissimo.
Ok, molto bene.
Sì, piove, c'è la nebbia e questo pomeriggio il temporale.
Lovely. I'm not gonna stop you. Keep going.
Yeah, this is
Keep
it. It's
doing.
Yorkshire. What do you expect?
That
This is what
was
we love about Yorkshire.
very good. That was I don't know Yorkshire as I was discussing, but it
It's
was
very
very good.
green.
It's very green. That makes sense.
Yeah. Mm.
But freddissimo. That's something we didn't cover, and that issimo
hmm
ending suffix means very. So freddissimo for everybody that missed that. Very cold, not just cold,
hmm
which is
Very good.
ridiculous. We're in
So,
May.
yeah, I know. Somebody didn't tell King Charles. It's his fault. So, freddissimo, and you've got caldissimo as well.
Caldissimo.
Could you
Esatto.
also say, I've heard this said before, if you like repeat the word. So, if you could you say, fa freddo, freddo?
Sì.
Oh, repeating it makes it more cold.
Sì, it's true. With adjectives, it works that way. C'è
Okay.
freddo freddo, o caldo
Yeah.
caldo, o quel bambino è alto alto. That child is very tall. The same child
Wow.
that we were picking on
Yeah,
last
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. I think
Uh,
doctors are studying him. Okay. Right. Okay, Marco. Grazie mille.
Grazie a te,
Mille.
Martin. Grazie mille a te. E grazie a tutti. Now the little dialogue and the
Mhm.
answers are going to be on Twitter at ItaliAndiamo.
Perfetto. Ok, grazie. Alla prossima.
Alla prossima. Ciao Martin.
Ciao. Scusa, che ore è?
Sono le 10.
Sai a che ora apre il ristorante?
Mm, credo a mezzogiorno.
Manca molto tempo. Ho fame.
Anche io ho fame.
So, what time does the restaurant open? And what do Marco and Martin have? Okay, Second one.
Mhm.
Che tempo fa oggi?
C'è il sole e fa molto caldo. Ci sono 30 gradi.
20 gradi? Non è molto caldo?
No, 30 gradi.
Ah, sì, allora è molto caldo.
Forse oggi piove.
Speriamo. So, what is the temperature today? I'll try that again.
Mhm.
What is the temperature today? And what did Marcus say in his last line?